Hello, hockey fans. This is Hockey Outsiders episode 12. I'm Mike Jensen. We've got a couple of special guests here today. Go ahead, Shane.
I'm really special. My name's Shane. Shane Thompson, ready to talk some hockey.
All right.
Doing my last draft of the year today. So,
And probably the most famous person that we've ever had on this podcast, Mr. Richard Cloutier.
Yeah, famous. Yeah, whatever. That's kind of like my old thing. I'm a former hockey blogger now instead of a hockey blogger now.
You
Um,
still blog
yeah.
fairly often, don't you?
No, actually, I've completely walked away from it. I don't know. It might start up again, but I'm kind of distracted by life now.
That life always seems to get in the way. That is for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, anyway, we're going to things to talk about. We're all going to run down and give our opinions on who we think finishes where. And maybe we can jump into a little bit of playoff predictions and who our Stanley Cup favorite is to start the season off and see how correct we are by the end of it.
sounds good to me.
Sounds okay? All right, where do you guys want to start?
Why don't we go with the Atlantic or Atlantic first, maybe?
Sounds good to me. Atlantic.
I think it's one of the divisions that's going to have the most change. Last year it was Montreal. I don't think Montreal's as good this year. I think they're definitely going to take a step back, and I think a team like Tampa Bay has a good chance to be right up at the top this year. So that's a big change.
I agree with that. I think, as I mentioned this last night on the podcast we did last night, I think this division is so up in the air that literally almost 8 of the top 10 teams could be right in the playoff mix, depending on how their seasons sort of pan out. I'm not a huge fan of New Jersey making that big of a push, or Detroit for that matter, but I think the rest of the teams in that division can be scattered through.
Are we talking Metro here? Or are we talking Atlantic?
Oh, the Atlantic. Sorry,
Atlantic, yeah.
I was looking.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's Shane and I are on the same page. I actually think Tampa's going to win the division.
yeah, I think the same way. I think Tampa.
Me too. We concur.
I don't think Montreal's going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility as well. I dropped them down to 3 behind Toronto, but I could very easily see Boston or Ottawa jump over them as well. So.
I actually don't. I think Montreal has a goalie when he's healthy, and Mike just disappeared. Yeah, that's an interesting. There's a chair. There he is. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Montreal. Like, I don't know how you win without centers, and if Price goes down, and he is known to do that from time to time, bad things will happen in Montreal.
I think they're scrambling. I think they'll end up making a real big push for Duchesne, which will help out a lot. I think Duchesne's a heck of a player, but if they stand pat and don't do anything, yeah, they could very well fall off hard, because we've seen this team with Carey Price do extremely well, and without Carey Price be one of the worst teams in the league. So it's a big risk to take when you're banking that much on one player on your team. You know?
And he's had injury issues, let's be real. It's not like he's had a perfect record in the NHL. So he's amazing when he plays, but if he misses any time, they've already shown that they just cannot win without him. So he's got to be perfect.
Yeah, and they don't really have they haven't brought in a very capable backup there either so far.
Well, Montoya went down today. He got hurt today. So
they scored 9 today, but it's preseason, so
yeah.
That's like winning.
I also find it odd they're trying out all these young defensemen with Shea Weber, like Mete and.
Well, it's because they don't have anybody. That's the problem.
Right.
It's mid 1980s Oilers defense on Montreal, so yeah. There's nothing happening there.
Like they're trying to retread on Streit, and like, what's Streit gonna do? I don't see anything from Streit, honestly.
Other than file for a pension, there's not much Streit can do.
So.
One of the other teams that's making a big step this year is Buffalo. I said this last year too. I remember this.
See, I've given up any form of optimism with the Sabres because they just it's not that they don't have talent, they just don't happen.
Yeah,
there's certain teams in the NHL that just don't happen. Nothing ever happens for them.
Yeah. I gotta agree. I with you, Mike. I was wanted to put Buffalo higher, but then as I'm making my lists, I have them behind Florida still. I still think Florida's a better team. I think they're going to do better. So
Florida's in a tough situation because they too are in that same situation where they have all the talent in the world, but it just seems to not come together. And ever since they traded away Yager, it seems like they've gotten that much worse, which is odd to me for the simple fact that he shouldn't be that much of an impact of a player on a team that young. And
well, the cap situation there is always going to handcuff that team. You know, like they're a basement team in terms of spending. You can only go so far if you can only have so many people signed, right? Like, I think the moves they made this summer with Vegas were kind of telling. They gave away two $5 million players. They gave away because they couldn't pay them.
Right.
I think losing Marchessault is a big one for them. I think he's one of the bigger ones that they're going to miss a lot. And it's a weird situation. They are so young and they do have so much promise there and so many good players, but they just seem to never bring it together. And this is where we kind of differ. This is why I like Buffalo a little bit, because I think Buffalo's got I think that they've just put everything properly, coaching wise, all the way down through their lineup. They're really young. They're going to be really, really strong and hard to sort of beat. And they've sort of built a little bit of a rivalry with Toronto, which means I think that's going to motivate most of these guys to actually play a little bit better this year, hopefully.
My worry with them is like some of the guys they added. They added Pouliot, and I don't think Pouliot's much of a player, really. Like, I think he's kind of proven he's not a good player. So
we had him.
Buffalo is the Canucks of the Eastern Conference, but they're more Canadian.
Shane's a Canuck fan, by the way. Nice.
Yeah, don't have the jersey today, but
good stuff.
That's one-time jersey wear.
I want to ask you guys, how problem do you think the Ottawa Senators have with Erik Karlsson's injury?
They have no chance if he's really badly hurt. He's maybe the best player in the NHL when he's at his best. Like, I know he's not going to score like Crosby. Crosby, I think, has more of an impact overall, and McDavid has more of an impact overall, but he's in that category of the best player in the NHL kind of talk. So,
you look at Ottawa's roster and you can't figure out for the life of you how they win games.
Yeah,
like outside of him, like he's the team, and because I actually will go you one further. I think he's more important to Ottawa than McDavid is to the Oilers and Crosby is to the Penguins. Like, he's the team.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
So do you think that injury hinders Ottawa when it comes to the standings? I mean, they made a pretty good run last year, being a game away from the finals, right? Do you think that is going to be something that really hinders Ottawa and their shot at making the playoffs?
I initially did. I still I think they're right there. They're right in that group that's going to win 44, 45 games and have a chance. But I like some of the young players they have. Like, I really like Thomas Chabot, who's going to play for them this year, who looks like he's going to be another amazing defenseman that they've got. And we talked yesterday about Pajot. I really like Pajot. I think he's an underrated player. And I like some of their younger players like Zingle. I think they've got team speed, and they've got a system that seems like I know it didn't make sense that it worked last year, but it worked last year. And I imagine they're going to do pretty much the same this year. And Anderson should be healthy the whole year, or playing the whole year, which should help. We'll see if he's as good as last year, though.
Yeah. It's gonna be...
I have Ottawa finishing third, but like I said, I don't really know how they win games. Like, Toronto's got an identifiable roster, if you can put it that way. You know who's going to win the games for the Leafs, and I have them second. And Tampa Bay is just a loaded roster. The fact that they had the year they did last year was an anomaly for the talent that's on that team. But Ottawa, I look at the roster and go, I don't get it. Like outside of Carlson, but
the third line center is Logan Brown.
There are some guys that I like this for sure, but after those kind of guys, there isn't really much there that really stand out ish, if you know what I mean.
They better have a lot of cheeseburgers. That's all I can say.
That's Hammond, right? Well, Craig Anderson. I think Craig Anderson is one of the most underrated goalies in the league, mind you. But
yeah, he just signed too, eh?
Yeah, nice.
Anderson's a good goalie. Yeah,
he signed for a nice value too. It was like 4.5 or something like that a year. That's right what he should be. That's a good deal for them.
So for your top three in the Atlantic, how do you have it sitting? You've got Tampa. I think we're all in agreement that Tampa's going to be first in that division. Who do you have second?
I have Toronto, which is crazy.
Yeah,
I have the Leafs.
Toronto's second. Okay.
Yeah, I kept Montreal at number 3, but I kind of am ready to move them down further too. I kind of want to see them play in the regular season a little bit. It looks on paper like they should be worse.
I think with the Leafs, Sportsnet's going to pick up the puck and run down the ice and throw it in the net of the opposition every single night. So yeah, the Leafs will do well. Like,
I watched a little bit of the game. I think you're right, because they did give them a power play with a minute left in the game to try and win it.
Yeah. No, it's the what Sportsnet paid them how many billion, and like they care about Toronto in Toronto, so like, you know, you want your conspiracy theories, there you go.
We had this discussion last night. I asked Shane what is his hated team, and I'll ask you the same question, Richard. Who's your most hated team? Mine is the Leafs, and I have not shied away from that ever. But I mean,
my most hated team.
Yeah.
Oh, give me a minute. You know what? I'd say I don't like the Ducks very much. I don't like the way they play. That's a bit of a floating question, because if the Canucks were better, I'd probably dislike the Canucks. If the Flames were better, and we'll get to that topic later. I think the Flames is one of these teams everybody's overrating this year. But I don't think they're any match for the Oilers this season, not even the same stratosphere. So no, they're, when somebody's crap, there's not worthy to hate a crap team. You're wasting emotional energy hating a crap team. The Ducks win, and they win dirty, and that bothers me. And especially when the team I like has a bunch of skilled guys who actually do stuff. And to watch a team that plays dirty beat them is not the way the league is supposed to work. You're supposed to be endorsing and promoting talent. And unfortunately, the NHL doesn't do that, because they want certain markets to win. And so cheap teams get away with this. Did you like this season when the refs tried for 2 games to clamp down on the rules, and then they went, nah?
What is it, like 45 penalties a game, yeah?
I watched the first period of tonight's Oilers games. I saw McDavid get hooked going in through the offensive zone. They just grabbed his 2 hands, and it was like, oh, welcome back to last season. Because McDavid would have 160-point seasons if people just let him play. But the league's not going to do that.
It's too bad. I would love to see it.
I think
let him outskate everybody.
I'll give a little bit of credit where credit is due. I think Calgary has done a pretty good job of building their team up to be competitive. That's for sure. I mean, that defense is pretty solid, I would say, and they do have some pretty decent guys up front. I know it irks most people to say, but I don't really hate the Flames as much as most Oilers fans do, and I guess that's. I mean, I used to love the rivalries back in the day when it was, Klinsky and Neuendijk and all those guys against our great lineup of guys. I used to love those rivalries, and I hated them at the time. But I almost hated the LA Kings more than I hated Calgary back even during that time.
Well, the Kings are another team that played cheap and dirty hockey, though.
Yeah.
for me, it's just the Leafs, and I said the same thing to Shane last night. I think I hate the fact that they're always crammed down every single Canadian's throat, and then everyone says, "Well, they're the biggest fan base." Well, they are because they're crammed down everybody's throats. And since
I like their team. They got talent, and they have a ton of talent. Like a ton of offense. It's fun hockey to watch, and because they move the puck and shoot and do things. And there's not a lot of teams in the league that win that way. Like, you compare for a second, like, oh, okay, the team I like the least, if I was thinking about this a little bit more, Minnesota Wild, because of the way they play.
There's so much to like.
Because it's like visiting a morgue for 82 nights of the year. It's like, why am I watching this?
Play the boring style of hockey. But I imagine you didn't like the Jersey Devils back in the day then either.
Nobody did. They won cups. They won cups, and 3 people showed up at the parade. Like, who cares? Like, it's irrelevant. In a vacuum, who wins the cup? It's they might as well call the New Jersey Devils not New York. Although that's the Islanders' name, right? So they can't use that.
Well, I am going to differ with you guys on this one a little bit. I've got Buffalo sitting in second in this one.
Wow. So is that based?
Wow.
So what do you base that on?
I just think that I like the compete level of a lot of the guys that they have there, and I think that they're going to have Oposo is going to come back, and he's been sort of overshadowed with the injury and that sort of a situation. He's going to come back and have a strong year. Vander Kane's played very well there. I mean, they've got just a host of talent. I think Rasmussen takes a big step this year as well. Or, sorry, not Rasmussen. Ristolainen on D, which is he's kind of the anchor there, and he's so good, so young, such a great defenseman. I think that they just take the next step, and I think that they're right there. And again, they have that little bit of a rivalry with the Leafs, so I think that just sort of pushes them into that second spot. I do see Toronto in third in that one, and I do think Buffalo and Toronto could be flip-flop in those two positions.
Yeah, I don't know. Buffalo is just Buffalo to me. I can't do it. Like, it's just.
I'm with you there, Richard. I think they need to prove it to me. They absolutely need to prove it. There's been years where I've been like, okay, this Buffalo team looks good on paper. Everything looks ready to roll. And they just always fizzle. They always fizzle.
The thing you got to keep in mind with the Sabres is their Jumbotron committed suicide. What does that tell you? Like, seriously, it couldn't take it anymore. It just died, and that tells you everything you need to know about the Sabres. Like, nobody wants to play there, including the
I think basically everything needs to go right for them to get where you're saying, and that's like everything. Eichel needs to become next level. Okposo needs to be completely healthy, which is not for sure at all. And Lehner needs to be hit the potential that everybody thinks. Lehner, he's this big body. Oh, he's got so much talent. When he was in Ottawa, everybody thought in Ottawa he should be the goalie, not Craig Anderson. Well, he's still yet to prove it in like a full season. So
that is the only worry that I have with Buffalo is if Lehner can actually do what he's supposed to do in there. Right. I think that's the biggest question mark in Buffalo is Lehner. But I mean, if they can just stick together and pull that young core together like they look like they may very well be doing, I think they're going to be just fine. I see 3 teams sort of battling it out for 2-3 in that division, and it's Florida, Toronto, and Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm sad about Detroit. I got to be honest. Looking at the roster and they used to be not one of my favorite teams, but a team that I respected, absolutely, because they made the right organizational decisions. And it seems like they've been on a run for a while here of just making poor decisions, not letting young players play quick enough, putting Dylan Larkin in a bad situation last year, like not understanding how to rebuild on the fly. And it's ugly there now. Like, they don't even have a goalie, it looks like, for the future. Mrazek isn't really the guy.
They mentioned the same thing here today. They've got Cora. I don't know how to pronounce his name, Coro or Corio or whatever his name is. He looks like a really promising goaltender as well, but they've got to throw him on waivers and in order to pass through to get reassigned. And the announcers today were saying that, yeah, he'll probably get picked up by somebody. He's a
They
good
did
player.
the same with Martin Burke last year, who they managed to get him back, but he was one of the few guys that got claimed off of waivers by a team because he's a young potential good player, and they just keep them too long. They keep them in the minors until they're 24, and then they can't clear waivers when they bring them up and drop them back down. Then they're screwed. Now they've got guys that have talent that didn't get enough taste when they were 22. I don't know. I just don't like the way they manage their minor system at all.
Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest one to. It's one of those things where I think they've earned every bit of respect that anybody ever gives them. But at the same time, I think it's also their time. They needed to sort of rebuild, and I think that it was sort of a thing that was coming, and they pushed it back as far as they could. And I think it's just their time now to just sort of take that rebuild and just sort of run with it. I think they know that as well. You're going to see like their top line is definitely not looking really good this year, and they're going to be in tough, that's for sure.
But I mean, they went like 2 years ago or whatever. Like that shows me I don't think they do know what they're doing, because that's not a guy you want to get if you know you need to rebuild.
Yeah.
Michigan voted Trump last election, right?
That's how we should base our things.
Well, no, that's all you have to know. Like, it's Trump and then done. It's
let's keep it moving. I remember last year we did our first one of these, and we wound up only doing the Metro, and we never did another division, another anything. So.
Let's go up to the Metro. Let's do the Atlantic and then the Metro here. I touched on this a little bit in the last podcast. I don't see the top two teams really moving. I see Pittsburgh overtaking the first spot, but I see Washington kind of staying right there. There are a couple of teams that I do see making big moves, and one of those teams is Carolina. They could very well pop up and take either Columbus or New York out of that third spot there.
Yeah, I have Pittsburgh, Washington, Rangers, Columbus. I wanted to put Carolina higher, but I looked at it again. I think people are, even me, I was overhyping how much better they are. They're good, but I don't think their defense is, unless Hennepin turns into what he's supposed to be, I don't think their defense is quite where it needs to be a real playoff team. So I keep them at 4.
Yeah, I don't have Carolina anywhere in the picture. I concur about Pittsburgh. I concur about Washington. I have Columbus in 3rd. Then I have Rangers and Islanders. And I actually figure that there's going to be 5 teams from the Metro and 3 teams from the Atlantic that make the playoffs.
That could very well happen. I think the Rangers will be there as well. Who do you have as the 5th team there, though? You got Washington, Pittsburgh, Columbus, the Rangers, and...
Okay, so Pittsburgh 1st, Washington 2nd, Columbus 3rd, Rangers 4th, Islanders 5th. And then Philadelphia and Carolina, don't care, and New Jersey last. New Jersey would finish last in the AHL this year. Let's just put it to you that way. So it's they're an atrocious roster, and they'll die a horrible death.
That's my most hated team right now. That's the team I look at on paper and I just go, ugh. I just want to burp.
What do you think Taylor Hall drinks before bed every night?
Oh God!
Like a bottle of NyQuil, like the whole bottle.
Yeah. Why did I want out of Edmonton? What was wrong with me?
Like going from that was bad.
That's a sour point. Oilers fans that trade, but I think it worked out in the best for us. I think that's
a great move for you guys now.
Looks like great move for Edmonton.
Absolutely.
Islanders, I think, are interesting just because we talked about this yesterday with Tavares. They got to make the playoffs this year. They absolutely need to make the playoffs, and they don't look any different to me than last year.
This is where I differ with Richard a little bit. I think that you could see either Carolina or Philadelphia taking over the Islanders and possibly even the Rangers in that division, for the simple fact that I think both teams are a year older and they've made sort of – I'm not a big fan of Philadelphia's goaltending, mind you, but I mean at the same time I think Carolina could very well I think they're a good enough team all the way around. I don't mind their defense. I like guys like Falk and the young kid Slade took a big step last year as well. So, I mean, I could see them taking over the Islanders, and that's really risky for them because you've got Tavares coming up, right? He's gonna, he's looking for a new contract, and if they're not really sort of going to build around him, how much longer is it going to be before he just says, "I'm done"?
Well, we all know that the key to Tavares' career is Jordan Eberle. So it's going to be a totally different team this year because of Eberle.
Eberle, star maker.
Like the Islanders might need to play 2 goalies on most nights, like at the same time, like play 4 skaters and 2 goalies because of Eberle.
4 skaters and 2 goalies. Well, they said that there was a post, and you know that I run the Oilers fan group there, and there was a post today saying that one guy, I don't know if he was being funny or if he was serious, but he wrote something along the lines of, "Why did we get rid of Eberle? We're only paying him $6 million. He's an $8 million player. Stupid move to get Strome. He's a waste of space." And I thought, please tell me you're joking. Please tell me you're kidding that Eberle would be worth $8 million anywhere on any team ever in the league. I don't think he's worth even $6 million to where we're at right now. I mean, where he is right now, and I just don't see. As you guys you probably know from previous podcasts, he was one of the guys that I didn't not like him as a person. He's a great person, and I've heard he was really a nice person, a nice guy, a great guy off the ice. But the way that he played hockey just drove me insane.
Eberle has kind of said himself in an interview this summer that maybe he got too relaxed. And so if you're on a team and Connor McDavid's your leader, and Connor McDavid has the same thing Gretzky used to have, this insane thing about winning and needing to win everything, because this is what the champion players do, right? Like they have to win. And then you have a player like Eberle who's sort of, well, I'll go play hockey, like winning.
This okay being okay. And I think that was a horrible thing.
The Oilers' room needed to change.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason they brought in Lucic. Everybody rips the Lucic signing, but I'll tell you what, Lucic is somebody who had to fight his entire career to get where he is, and that's the point with Lucic, is that here's a fighter, and this is what you've put together. You watch last year's playoffs, and the team fought, and that's not something you're used to seeing with an Oilers team. Usually, I was watching Oilers hockey, and the team would lay down all the time. Hall would actually be the only guy out there trying before McDavid showed up. They brought in a bunch of, management would go sign these passive, maybe theoretically talented players, but players that didn't have the compete level. Eberle, the Islanders and the Oilers are not that different. Maybe the Islanders are 3 or 4 years behind. And it must be frustrating. The Tavares not signing thing tells me Tavares wants out. He might say that he wants to stay. He might take a big pile of money if they give it to him. But why, if you're John Tavares, why would you stay with that organization?
I mentioned the same thing yesterday. We kind of got on this topic last night as well. Where would he go? I mean, what teams could afford? Because Shane kind of brought up the McDavid contract and at $12 million. Tavares could very well ask for $12 million or even $14 million for that matter, and he's worth it. I mean, what team could bring on a $12 to $14 million contract?
And he's not a proven winner at all. So you're paying all that money, and you're not guaranteeing wins at all. He's already, he's a proven, he'll get you to 500 or a little bit above 500 kind of team, but he won't put you over the edge.
I think on the right team, he'd put you over the edge. But again, who's going to fork over that kind of money? What team can afford to bring on a player like John Tavares with that salary? There's not very many teams that can expend that kind of a salary on a player like Jonathan Tavares.
He seems like a classic Rangers player to me.
Yeah, you know that if his point total drops by 30 points after he signs the deal.
Yeah,
even the Rangers couldn't bring him in. I mean, there's not very many teams that have that extra space that would be able to pull something like that off. And that to me is more worrisome than the fact that they're talking about trading Tavares? Is where would he go? And
just looking at it, I just brought up the cap thing. This is the funny part. Montreal actually has more cap room than almost everybody, and they need a center. I think that's where, if you're Tavares, that's where you'd go. Or you take a team like San Jose, which after Big Joe goes, what do they have left? Like that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win anything. You know what I mean? Like if you're Tavares, you probably want $10.5 million per season plus a chance at winning a cup, because that's the one thing he doesn't have with the Islanders. The Islanders might make the playoffs this year, but they're not a cup team. Like seriously, in the Eastern Conference, there's 3 teams that I think that are competitive. Like truthfully, 3 teams:
I think
Tampa, Pittsburgh, and Washington. And those are your 3 teams. You pick your cup winner out of those 3 teams.
Yeah. Totally agree. And that's almost as frustrating as a team totally tanking and getting a first pick overall, is having a team that's just stuck in the middle. Like I'm dealing with that with Vancouver right now, who keep making like little moves in the offseason to be better this year. To get themselves.
Explain to me why Vancouver hasn't completely blown it up yet. Because I sit there and look at the roster and go,
I think
what do you? I look at it and I go, why don't you guys just start it over? Hit the reset button.
2 years ago, like not now. 2 years ago, they could have done that. They were done. The Sedins are not the Sedins anymore, and so you're done. It's over.
think sort of do it out of principle, though. Don't you think that it's one of those things that they want to retire the Sedins there in Vancouver, so they're just holding off for them?
That's so stupid, though. That's so stupid. It's a business. Like everybody understands. We all love the Sedins, but come on.
Well, I don't understand. Like, I'm just looking at the roster. I don't understand Eriksson's contract. I don't understand Gagne, and I don't really understand Vanek either. And things is not because they're bad players. Like, there's nothing wrong with any of those guys. But I just sit there and look and go, the future of that team is Bo Horvat and Brock Besser.
Closer.
You know.
Oh, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
They are a team that's fighting every offseason to get back to the middle. They're not just like the Islanders are already in the middle, and they will, with their same roster as last year, they don't need to make any changes. They'll win 45, 44 games. Vancouver
they have a goalie.
Halak, man, or Grice, or
I think Halak will take over that job again next year. I think Halak will be the starter for most of the season next year. I do think.
Yeah, but I think it's just a stopgap. I think both of them are just they've got a couple young goalies that I think they've already made the decision that neither one of these guys are long term, and they don't want to pay another goalie. And I think long term they'll have a young guy come in.
All right, so let's move over to the Western Conference. So, how do you guys see the eight teams?
Sorry, what did you say?
How do you guys see the top 8 finishing in the East?
The East.
So if I was to put it, I actually have like if you're talking regular season, or are you talking playoffs? Like who comes out alive?
Who do you got finishing 1st to 8th in the Eastern Conference?
Oh, I would put it somewhere as like Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa Bay.
I have the same top 3.
Toronto, Columbus. Like it's throwing hot dogs down the hallway for the rest of it. Like there's not really much of a point past Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, and Washington. Like I really don't think it's. I don't really actually think it's close. But those 3 teams in a big separation.
Yeah, I have the same top 3, and then I also feel like it's a crapshoot the rest of the way through. I don't know for the rest of it.
Yeah,
like the only thing we know is Detroit and New Jersey will be bad. We know those 2 teams will suck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the Western Conference, and we'll start off with we'll leave the best one for last. So we'll start with the Central with all those shitty teams there, and then we'll go to the real strong.
Can somebody explain something to me with the Central? Because I've heard like all noise all summer, and I don't understand this. Okay, so unless I was watching a different playoffs than everybody, Nashville got lucky. I'm not saying they're a bad team, but they got lucky. Sometimes in the playoffs, good teams rule each other out. And a team will kind of accidentally get in the final. I think back to when I was a kid, there was one year where Pittsburgh with Mario ended up playing the North Stars, I think it was. And it's like, well, why the North Stars? Why are they even in the conversation? They didn't belong there, right? Like, you sort of sit there and go, the Oilers should have beat the Ducks, but the refs were wearing Ducks jerseys. There's not much to choose from between Nashville and Anaheim. Neither team was in the class of the Penguins. Not even close. It was an accidental final. So everybody this year is saying Nashville's going to win the Central. No, they're not. They just won't. Like, I don't see it.
I agree. I still have Minnesota and Chicago 1-2.
This one's a little bit more clear cut for me as far as the Central goes. I think I have the three teams that I really like, and then the rest that I'm not really sold on. And the three teams I see that I really like, they're obviously Chicago, Minnesota, and the Dallas Stars. I think are going to make a big push this year.
I think Dallas wins the division.
That could very well be, but I'm not sold on St. Louis, Nashville, Winnipeg, or Colorado's just going to be atrocious. But I mean,
Colorado's going to be awful.
Yeah,
Colorado's going to be awesome.
That was great.
Minus 112 last year. That's just ridiculous.
They got to face so much. I mean, they got no chance. They got no chance to win. They might do as bad as last year, honestly.
Well, they'll do worse than last year. I think even their team is really bad, really, really bad.
Comeback player of the year, Patrick Sharp.
You think so?
We'll see. I'm not sold on that. The Chicago retread stuff, where they just bring back players that used to play for them over and over. It used to make sense. I don't know. These old guys they're bringing in now. They got no choice now. They don't have any money, so they have to bring back whoever they can get for cheap. I think we're at the beginning of the demise of the Blackhawks being as good as they've been. I think now you're going to see Dallas, Nashville, Minnesota really every year battling for them for that top spot. Chicago's not going to reign over them anymore.
It's a tight division. Like,
I'm with you on the same. I'm not really sold on Nashville as well. And I'm not really that confident in St. Louis anymore either. So I think that the top three there are pretty much set for me. I think Chicago, Minnesota, Dallas, you can sort of put them in any of those top three positions. Dallas could very well win the division, but they could very well finish third as well. I'm not sure the defense is
on paper, you'd think Minnie would win the division.
Yeah. Well,
I have Minnesota winning the division. They were I understand your point, the way they play, but they scored the second most goals in the NHL last year, behind only Pittsburgh. Like, that's a crazy thing. Minnesota scored goals last year. And I understand.
Bad to watch.
I know. It's the four lines, no real star, just go.
Green and red jerseys. Like, who wants to watch that? Like, what an ugly team. Like, they're ugly team.
And they just never win in the playoffs too. So there's this like cloud hanging over them in the playoffs as well, where it's like, oh yeah, you're great in they're just that regular season team. But I think they're still going to be a good regular season team.
Yeah, I think that they've got a really nice veteran presence and young guys that are coming up through. I mean, if you look at that team and they're bringing Eric Stahl in, it's sort of revitalized him a little bit. Zach Parise and those kind of guys, and then you've got the guys that are going to take the mantle later on with Nita Ryder and Charlie Coyle, and they got a really good mix of veteran guys and younger guys that are coming up. So I think that they'll definitely be in the top three there. Like I said, they could finish any sort of mixed in between there.
So I have Dallas. I think the big difference we have is I have Dallas lower, way lower. I think they're going to be, maybe the Jets in them, I think, are not too far off. I still think St. Louis is better. I hate Dallas' defense, and it was their problem last year, and I know they've improved it a bit, but their second pairing is Hamhuis and Patterin, who are Hamhuis is not the same player he used to be at all. And Lindell and Johns are their third pairing. Like, these are not NHL awesome defensemen. These are bad defensemen. So they're going to get scored against a lot. Like, there's going to be a huge amount of goals.
It's going to be a shooting gallery. No question. Dallas games are going to be
I love them getting Radulov. Like Radulov, I think is an undervalued player, and I think that's a great move for them. I think that he's going to absolutely light it up on that first line. I think if you're in fantasy, Radulov's a buy this year, and you're expecting a 10-point more than last year and what he had in Montreal. But Hansel is not that great, I don't think. I mean, their forwards are great. Their forwards are nice. It's the defense that terrifies me. And I always focus on defense when I'm picking standings. If your defense is not at least 4 deep, and really solid 4 deep, then I'm going against you. Like Philadelphia, I will never bet on Philadelphia because they always have a crappy 4th defenseman and a crappy 5th defenseman and a crappy 6th defenseman.
Their biggest.
And I think it's the same this year. I think you're going to see they're overblown.
Ron Hextall.
They missed those days where he cleared the crease. They need a goalie. Cleared the crease.
Defenseman. He was the perfect mix for fantasy hockey.
And he was a goal scorer on top of it. So that'll be an interesting one. That's the division though. That Central is the most fun division. It's the most like they're all good and really could come down to 1 or 2 games. Like Jets are really interesting this year too. Like Jets on paper to me look better than Dallas. Like they are almost as deep scoring and they've got better defense. And if
no goalie. I know exactly.
Mason's no pick.
Well, Hellebuck's supposed to be the savior there, but I'm not even sure he gets the starting role there this year.
He's a sneaky guy in fantasy though, because like I've heard a lot of last year, everybody wanted him in fantasy. Everybody was like, "Oh, the Jets are going to be good. Hellebuck's going to get all the starts," and then he choked, and the team choked. But Mason's going to come in. Mason's not good. Mason's going to choke.
It's terrible.
And then Hellebuck's going to get a second chance. And when he gets a second chance, he's got talent, and they're a better team. So he might have a resurgent year this year, and he might be the savior still. It's not over. He's still young. Goalies take forever to mature sometimes. Some do, some don't. But I could see Hellebuck having a big comeback, and even like midpoint in the season, they make the change, and then Winnipeg becomes a scary-looking team.
I like Winnipeg. There's a lot to like on that team. There's a lot of players that I really like. I love Bufflin. Scheifele's turned into a really, really solid player. I like Brian Little. There's a lot to like. Ehlers and Laine, of course, are both young sniper guys, but they just have this effect where they just can't bring it all together. And I'm not sure if that's just a room issue or what the deal is, but they have something that just sort of blocks them every single year. And I don't think that that's going to change this year. It could, but I just don't see it. I think Dallas has got. Let's be realistic. I think Dallas has got two guys that could very well lead the league in points on any given year, in Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, and not very many teams in the league have that.
And Ben is poised to have a comeback year here too, where he looks like a superstar again. He was not healthy last.
See, every time I think about Winnipeg, I always think the same thing. What if the Oilers would have ended up getting Laine and put Laine with McDavid? What that would have looked like?
That would have been sickening. What if what would the Oilers still be in the same position if they had drafted Seguin over Hall?
See, here's the problem: is Seguin. Well, as the urban legend goes, Seguin was sent out of Boston not because of his play, but because of attitude. And, apparently he's grown up and matured in Dallas, but in Boston he was kind of a shithead. And, the Oilers had this sort of the same thought. Like there was a lot of rumors and thoughts that Hall was an attitude problem in Edmonton. I don't actually believe that he necessarily was. In fact, I think it was kind of everybody around him that was problematic, because I think Hall has a high level of compete and he takes it seriously. But Seguin was partying. Well, you can find anywhere on any given hockey website 12 pictures of Marchand and Seguin with their shirts off.
Yeah.
and sometimes they're together and sometimes they're apart. Like it's
Yeah, you're right.
Hey, I'll tell you this: if you're 18 and you're gonna party, what a better way to do it than with Marchand and no tops, right? I mean, let's be real.
Boston's a good city, though. It would be a good city to get into mischief. Like, Seriously, like, can you imagine playing in Winnipeg? Like, that's your life ambition? Is I'm going to play in Winnipeg? What's that? Like, seriously, I live in Inuvik. I know things about isolation and what it does to you. Winnipeg's not very far removed than Inuvik from the center of the universe. Like, it's very similar distance.
Yeah.
A squirrel froze to death here today. That's what happens in Inuvik.
And it was on the news. It made top story in the news.
You know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. If you're talking about the, well, Dallas is an interesting city, but is there a hockey market there? And how long could they sustain? Their owner is breaking the bank this year.
I remember last year, I was looking around for tickets because we were thinking of a place to travel, and I remember seeing 2 tickets, 2 beers, and 2 hot dogs for $11 a person.
Yeah.
And I was stunned by that because you know what ticket prices are like in Edmonton.
I'm going on vacation next week. I'm going on like a month vacation, right? And I'm going to Toronto first, and then I'm going to Miami, and I'm going to go to hockey games in both cities. And it's really hilarious because the Leafs game is going to be $300 or $400 just to get in the building, and the Panthers game's $24 a ticket.
Huge contrast, eh?
Yeah, and Dallas, you watched the games last year, and here's a really entertaining team. Maybe they didn't put up the wins last year, but here's a really entertaining team. And you got 10,000 people in the building. And you have a Canadian, I believe he is a Canadian owner that put a big pile of money into this. They have to kind of win now.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the most exciting one, not just because our favorite team is one of the favorites to win it all, Richard, but it is a pretty interesting sort of division. Vancouver is going to be atrocious. Sorry, Shane.
It's all good.
See, I think this is the worst division in hockey.
Yeah, me too. I think so too.
I think this division's terrible. I think Edmonton's going to be a good team. I think Anaheim is going to finish second, and I think San Jose is going to finish third, and I think everybody else misses the playoffs. Calgary, I can't wrap my head around the fact that they have an average forward group and no goalie still. Mike Smith is brutal. Arizona's a preschool. LA is an old folks home. And Vancouver can't make up its mind if it's rebuilding or not. Like, it's a terrible division. San Jose, they have Burns and a bunch of old people as well. Like, it's I don't see this as being much of a division. And the Oilers they did some pretty smart management things and stuff. The core of the team's all pretty much the same age. These guys are going to grow up together and play together. And once the only real question I have in Edmonton is what's the defense going to look like? Like, straight up, like.
They do have some issues on defense. I think they may end up picking someone up sort of mid-season-ish. But I mean that's there.
Well, is Sekera and Russell a legitimate second pairing in this league?
And with Sekera is out for as long as he is too. You got to get through that first part of the season.
And we're going live in that pool in 1 minute, yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready. A minute. I'm 23rd pick, so I'm not too worried. I got a long time to wait.
I disagree with you a little bit, Richard, because I think the third spot in that division could be up for grabs with San Jose, Calgary, and LA all battling it out for there. I think all 3 of those teams are definitely good enough to be in the top 3 there, and I think that I think that you could see 4 or 5 teams from this division make it. Because I think I kind of put San Jose, Calgary, and LA in the same sort of situation as St. Louis, Nashville, even Winnipeg for that matter. I think that they're all capable of being in the show. They just have a few bounces sort of go their way. I mean, if you look at the LA Kings lineup, the lineup there is pretty decent. San Jose, I'm not as convinced on because they're sort of one of those things that are like. They're a veteran team with lots of good young guys, but they just don't seem to bring it together either. And then they're sort of, if you look at it and kind of think about it, they could very well be due for a little bit of a drop off as well.
Make sure here, right? The draft has just started.
Yeah, I see that.
Give it like
I
I would say there's 3 people that
I I think the Kings players have tuned Sutter out. I don't know why they tuned him out. Like he's dead. He's like seriously, he's got no pulse.
Yeah. And that team's just aging and they got nothing. They're just this they're like the Islanders, they're just gonna be the same. And they're gonna be over 500, but right in the middle. Not that great.
Are you fucking kidding me?
We're starting our draft here, by the way.
Yeah.
I think for Edmonton, the future is so nice, especially when you look at the way that division is and how ugly everything else around them is getting. The good teams, Anaheim, are getting old, and San Jose getting old. So, like, I guess maybe in the future, Calgary or Arizona might be on the come up in the future. But you guys have, I think, 4 or 5 years here of just destroying that division. And I think starting this year, Anaheim has their top 2 defensemen hurt. November, it looks like. So they're going to start.
Slavs out too.
So they're just going to start terrible. Like Anaheim could fall way back this year if they have a horrible start, which is very possible with all their injuries. So Edmonton just looked poised to win. Like no debate. That's the team. So I don't like San Jose as much anymore. Martin Jones is not the greatest goalie, and they're going to need a really good goalie now. Calgary might be there. Calgary, you're right about them being fun to watch. Good young players. They've drafted well for a few years now. I really respect how they've drafted. Like they've found value at their picks every year. And they also are playing their guys. Monahan, they let him play right away. And look how good he is. And guys like that. So Calgary's a team that if they can figure out a goalie to play and protect him a little bit, then maybe they'll be fine. Maybe Mike Smith will be okay this year, but I have doubts.
I'm just checking my Twitter. Somebody's messaging me that I should be promoting the retirement of the number 4 in Edmonton. How do you think that would fly?
Say that again?
So, somebody's messaging me on Twitter that I should be promoting the concept of retiring number 4. See, the way I figured, the only way that should be allowed is if Russell's actually in the jersey when they stick it up with the banners.
Look, I'll be very honest. I'm one of the guys that I despised Kevin Lowe when he was managing this team, but as a player, yeah, I can see why they would want to put him up in there, and for that, he does deserve it, but I think that it would bring a negative aura, and I don't know if that's something that they should go with at this point in time. Get to some winning and then have something positive where they can just mask it with positive things. You know what I mean? Bring in the nice shiny boy and then throw his name up in the rafters as a player. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
I think Oilers fans have let go of the Lowe thing by now. Like seriously, like why continue to hate the guy? He's irrelevant at this point. You just remember the player, and like people get hung up on the Ryan Smith thing, and it seems like there's mental block past that. And quite honestly, I think from what I've understand of the Ryan Smith thing with Lowe, both sides were being stupid.
Yeah, I think it's just it's a tough situation because there is just that sort of negative hate towards Kevin Lowe and it wasn't so much that he did shitty things for the team. It was his attitude, I think, that really sort of turned most of the fan base off. It's how he was so brash and cocky and arrogant, and it's that I think that's more the reason that I'm not for it at this point in time. It's not so much that he was, made some bad choices, firing Craig McTavish and then hiring that upgraded position. But I mean, that's to me is just the way that he handled the situations more than anything else. Calling out the fan base, saying that there's 2 tiers of fan bases, and alienating those people from being fans of the team is what bothers me more than him as the things that he did well as a player.
He does have some pretty good Brian Burke stories, though.
I imagine he like they hated each other from what I.
Yeah, ask Kevin Lowe sometime about Brian Burke and Scott Niedermayer. You'll get a good story.
Yeah.
Does anybody
That's
like Brian? Are there people out there who really like Brian Burke? Like he.
Well, he was quite respected, but he kind of comes off now as just a big old hot-headed idiot, right?
Dude, he comes off like, I don't know. He comes off like he's drunk in every press conference he gives, and
I would be.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. Calgary's interesting. Like it's an interesting team. I'll give them that much. They have some talent. The defense, like there's very few teams that have that group of defensemen that quality, and Calgary's got that going for it. Where I see this team, and this would be my same criticism of a team like St. Louis or the Islanders, let's say, is that at the end of the day, if you don't have a goalie, it seems like you might be able to get through the regular season, but you get into the playoffs and you're a first round out because you just don't have the goalie. And it seems like goalies can. You could almost break the league into thirds. Into 1/3 of winning is your forward group, 1/3 is defense, and 1/3 is who your goalie is. And that determines how people get advance and succeed. And Mike Smith's terrible. Like I don't know. Like the Oilers are going to play them. What is it, 4 or 5 times a season, and they're going to beat them every single time, and it's not even going to be close.
That's not a bad thing. It's good.
Well, I don't really care either way. As a hockey observer, I don't care.
You've cursed it.
As an Oiler,
what's going to happen? The first game of the year, the Oilers are going to fucking lose.
No.
Well,
The Oilers, their first game of the season, it's going to be like about a 6-0 sort of demolishing, and the commentators on Sportsnet will talk about the Leafs the entire time because that's what they do. They'll be discussing how Connor McDavid's hat trick affects the contracts of Auston Matthews, and like that's what they're going to be talking about because it's Sportsnet, right? Like,
yeah, well, they kind of do that now. Every little thing that happens there, they always would. How does it affect Nylander or Matthews or Marner? It's always that, and it drives me nuts. That's why I hate.
Stressing about the draft right now. Sorry.
Okay, so where are you guys in your draft? Let's discuss this. Where are you guys in your draft?
We're just heading up. So this is a really deep one, so I'll let you. I'll kind of fill you in on this one, so anybody that does watch this understands. So this is our big money draft, and we've got 14 managers, but it's deep. It's 28 rounds, and it's keepers. We have 6 keepers, but it's draft whatever year that they or whatever position they were drafted in the year before +1. So if you get a guy who's in the 20th round, he would then next year be your 19th round keeper, which means you have to keep that 19th round keeper to keep him at that value.
Okay.
And this one's a big one because we have 14 managers, so a lot of the stuff kind of goes a little bit funky. Like last year, I think out of the top 14 picks, I think there was like 7 or 8 goalies that were snapped up straight away, which changed the dynamic of the entire draft. So you had guys like, I think Shane got Crosby last year in the 6th pick or something crazy. Like,
yeah, I got him 6 or 7. It was insane.
So it really changes the dynamic of how the hockey draft sort of plays out. And it's a really interesting one because most of the guys in here kind of know what they're doing. And we've set it up so it's really competitive every year. So like, let's say, for example, you've got guys like who finish last, they get an extra keeper than what everyone else, or the guys who finished last and second last get 2 extra keepers than anybody who finished in the top 8. The third last guy gets 1 extra keeper of 7, so we can kind of stay competitive. So it's a really fun, interesting one, but it gets really deep. So we're just and right now we're just sort of like checking to see where we're going to be able to get. If hopefully Shane doesn't take the guy I'm looking at here. Oh, you did not.
Do you want to know how old I am? And this is a true story. Do you want to know how old I am? The last time I went in a hockey draft, I took Jaromir Jagr's rookie season in the 5th round.
Oh, good pick.
That's a true story. That's sad.
A good pick.
I was a teenager at the time, but true story. I took Jagger. He was a rookie for Pittsburgh, and I had a throwaway pick. It was a huge hockey draft. I grew up in this Laklabish town, which don't go there. And all the school teachers would get together, all the male school teachers. I don't remember any female teachers showing up for this thing, but there'd be about 30 school teachers, and they invited me because they knew I liked hockey, and I ended up winning the draft. And Jaromir Jagr was the fifth round pick. So there you go.
That's a
and it was his rookie season. I think he had 50 points that year.
I tried you in the one that we had for the admins, but you were just a little bit late in responding because we'd already started drafting at that point. But we'd like to get you. We'd like to get you in one with. We're going to do this next season. We're going to have one that's just the admins of the Hockey Outsiders and the Edmonton Oilers fan group and the Diehards group that we sort of partner with. So we're going to try and set one up that's just all the admins in there. So hopefully you guys will both join one next season when we have one.
Yeah, cool.
Should be a fun one for the ultimate bragging rights. We'll try and get a prize thrown in there as well at some point. But
the school teachers, incidentally, the school teachers would also have, that was a money draft that I won, but they'd also do a booze draft, and I don't drink, but the booze draft was everybody throwing in a 26, and when you have 30 or 40 teachers doing that, you get, well, if you live in Lockwood, that's enough booze for at least a couple of months. You got to drink in that town, man. Jagger's rookie season, 57 points. So there you go.
And he probably never got lower than 57 his whole career. Oh no, he did. Last year.
Where does Jagger show up? Because he's going to sign with somebody.
St. Louis, I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
It kind of makes sense. An aging team, although I would like to see him in Edmonton. I think to kind of mentor some of the young guys like Puljujärvi and maybe Yamamoto.
See, I think if the Oilers management are making a mistake this year, is that it looks like Yamamoto and Puljujärvi are going to be in that roster, and I don't know if either of them should be there. And it's not because they're not talented; it's because they're kids. And Puljujärvi barely speaks English still. Like, you're taking an awful risk with these young players that are adjusting. When there's a free agent, like the Iggy is still around, Jagger's still around, why wouldn't, if you have the cap room, why wouldn't you add one or two veterans and win?
Yeah.
I think that could turn around and bite them in the ass cap when it comes to the cap as well, because I think that they're going to need those younger, smaller cap hits later on. And they need to sort of manage that the right way. So we'll see what happens. There's still some
Yamamoto with full bonuses. With full bonuses is just like 1,100,000. Like his cap hit is nothing even at full bonuses, just because where he was drafted. So yeah, burning a year of his contract doesn't turn me on. I think he's going to be a great player for them, but and Puljujärvi just didn't look ready in the preseason. Like, he still doesn't look ready.
I think it's unfortunate. I think I brought this up yesterday. Richard, what do you think about the Oilers when they were in the midst of their losing and getting all the first round picks? Do you think that they were just unlucky in the picks they were given for a stretch of time?
Okay, let me go through draft history. Okay, so Sagan and Hall, and I'll answer this honestly. So Sagan Hall draft, I was either one of them I was fine with. I thought Hall was the better player, but Sagan's a center, and history will sort of dictate you take the center if there's a toss up, just positionally, right? Yeah. But I think they're pretty equal in terms of value. I don't think they're much different in terms of value. People could make the argument Sagan's probably maybe the better player, but I think they're pretty close. So that draft's fine in my mind. The Nugent Hopkins one, I can remember vividly screaming at the television, take Landeskog. And I screamed it over and over repeatedly for about 5 hours after they took Nugent Hopkins.
But do you think would have made it that much difference? I don't see them being all that far apart.
Well, that draft class, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that Tarasenko's draft class? Like, wasn't like Landeskog and Nugent Hopkins were not the right answer. Both of them were not the right answer in terms of who is the best player to come out of that draft year.
But if you compare it to Landeskog is better, for sure, I would say.
Well, what I liked about Landeskog and the Oilers team, you see, I'd watch these Oilers games and watch this team get run over. And my thinking always with Tambellini as GM and stuff is like, why do you keep bringing in Eric Boulangers? Why do you keep bringing in these players that get steamrolled and there's no physicality and there's no threat? Nobody's scared to play. You know, this is something they said about the Oilers last year. There's no tougher team to play against in the NHL because they're big and mean now. See, Chiarelli had this figured out where previous management didn't. You have to be big and mean. When the Kings were winning championships, because nobody could push them around physically, and the Oilers are doing the same thing here. You have a big, mean, intimidating team that's hard to play against, and they're going to battle you. And so I looked at the Nugent Hopkins thing. When you have Landeskog, who's like a leader, big physical player, you know, Forsythe, he's had injury issues, and he doesn't put up huge offense either. But I would have taken Landeskog. The Yakupov thing was, like, if you look at that draft class, that whole draft class was terrible. Like really, there's who's the stars that came out of that draft class?
Yeah, so that's bad luck, really.
That's bad luck, you know. And not to mention the fact that I think the Oilers ruined Yakupov, like they've ruined so many of their other prospects. I don't know what they do. Like, they like to yank their prospects change. Okay, so take tonight's game for example. You have Puljujarvi. Here's an offensive guy. He, you know, stick him on the fourth line. They did this with Yakupov all the time. One night he played in the first line, the next game stick him on the fourth line, then they'd bench him. And the player, it's like training a dog with a spray bottle. You spray the dog all the time, the dog has no idea what he's doing wrong or right. The dog just gets really confused and has a nervous breakdown. Well, this is what they did to Yakupov. The guy had a nervous breakdown. And now his career is ruined.
Vasilevsky, you dirty son of a... Is that you, Shane?
No, I wanted him. That was my next pick.
Son of a... 2 picks away, too. What the...
That was my next pick.
Sorry about that, Richard. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no worries. No worries. No.
I agree with the Yakupov thing. He had the pressure of the fans to be a superstar, but he probably should have been played as more of like a in there and he can skate with anyone, give him an assignment, give him a role like that. Like, he had ability, but they never let him, if they were going to put him on the scoring line, keep him as a scoring guy. Give him the time to get better. I feel bad.
And then with the Darnell Nurse draft, I remember screaming at the TV for that one that they should take Monahan, which they didn't get that chance. And then I thought they should take Ruotsalainen, not because Ruotsalainen was necessarily better, but he was right shooting. And the others just they have this habit of just drafting left shot defensemen. This is all they do. So I was screaming at the TV, well, at least take the right shot guy. No, they didn't. And Nurse, well, people love him. He's a lovable guy. He's tough.
He's tough.
But I don't know. The jury's still out in terms of where does this guy, what does he project? I don't think he's a top pairing guy ever. I don't know if he's a 3-4 guy. You know who he reminds me of? Luke Schenn. When Luke Schenn was drafted, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is going to be a 2-3 defenseman." Schenn's a 5'6" defenseman. He's big and tough, but he's a 5'6" defenseman.
Yeah,
Schenn's the career protector of McDavid. Like, right now, Lucic can do it. Lucic is not going to do it long term. Long term, Nurse is the guy who's always with that team, who intimidates the hell out of the other team, who, if he drops the gloves, is going to own whoever he fights.
See, and I think Nurse gets dealt.
You think so, eh?
I think Nurse gets dealt, and the reason I think Nurse gets dealt is the Oilers have Caleb Jones, they got Piasian. They actually have a whole bunch of left shooting defensemen, and you can only have so many of them. Eventually, these guys need a roster spot.
I like Piasian a lot. I think he's definitely going to have a good role in the future. I have him in my Dynasty League for fantasy, and I'm just sitting on him, loving it. I think they're grooming him to take over. Not too far away.
Well, and this is the thing. If you have, so Clefbaum is a lock. He stays. Sekera and Russell both have contracts where they can get moved in 2 years, which the Oilers will do. Both of them will be gone in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because they have and then the theory is that you'd have Nurse and Benning move up. But if you have Caleb Jones, who maybe is a better all-around player than at Nurse, because I don't know if the offense is there. I don't know if the puck-moving ability is there. And if you have Piasian, and you have Jones in a couple of years, maybe Nurse is expendable, and you could get an awful lot for him.
Yeah. And if Nurse does anything this year, there will be some teams who want him too. He's got the size, but he's also got the idea that maybe he could score a little bit. So if he puts a few points up, people might think, oh, maybe he does have that upside of like playing a little bit on the power play and helping us out that way. So somebody will want him, a big young defenseman. Somebody will want him, and they can get a good value for him.
Well, they can hang on to him. You look at the contracts. Both him and Benning are up at the end of this year. They probably both get. What do you call those? The temporary deals, a short term, 1 year, 2 year contract, bridge deals.
Oh, the bridge.
You stick both of them on bridge deals at maybe $2.5 million, and you can hang on to them for another season, and then you try and move Sekera and Russell for nothing. Basically, you give them both away. And in Russell's case, you might have to retain cap to get rid of them 2 years from now. And you hope to God Nurse and Benning can play a 3-4 role. And then you have Jones and, I don't know, would Mantha be the next one up or Bear? I don't know. But
Bear's proven himself so far to be really a good guy to keep an eye on as well, right?
The Oilers have 4 or 5 defensemen who will be NHL players if they're given an opportunity. The Oilers have this ability to screw up their draft picks. They're a terrible development team. And because you can already see them yanking Puljujarvi's chain, and they're going to dick him around too. And it's a waste of a talented player if they do it.
I'm terrified for him. Like last year, I thought he was going to be great, and they didn't play him right at all. And then they sent him right down, and he didn't look ready. I didn't know the English thing. The English thing's
he's actually suffering from very bad culture shock, and because he grew up in a part of Finland where nobody speaks English. So he came over here, couldn't speak a word of it. And they brought in Jokinen with the idea that he would be sort of the mentor, but it doesn't really appear that Puljujarvi, I'm guessing he gets sent to the AHL.
That's
Slepyshev looks more NHL ready, even though he's hurt like last year, just going by last year.
Yeah.
And Yamamoto comes out of nowhere.
Yamamoto's so little that we'll see. Like he's only 5'9" or something, right?
He's actually the smallest player ever taken in the first round of an NHL draft.
Right. So I mean, he's proven in the preseason here that he looks like he can handle it no problem, but that's very short time span. And if he starts scoring it in the NHL, he's going to get smashed by guys like Boganecki and whoever else, guys who just want to crush a little guy like that. So I'll be interested if he can manage over a full year.
You're asking an awful lot of a 19-year-old to play in the NHL, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. A 5'9". This is a little guy who's 19.
They were saying tonight, the brief bit of the broadcast I watched, they said he was at about 145 pounds.
Yeah, it's crazy how little he is. I've never seen a guy that little in the NHL.
Oh. I think Theoren Fleury was a bigger player.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because he had more muscle. He had more size on him.
And he was incredibly drunk, so he couldn't tell what was happening to him while he was playing.
Right, the whole time.
145 pounds of pure muscle. You guys need to remember that. He is muscle. All
right.
That's what I heard, though, is they said something about him being, really ripped.
Well, when you're 5'9", it's easier to be ripped. I don't know what to tell you. It's harder when you get bigger.
I think that they'll be fine. I think that they need to kind of have Yamamoto and Puljujarvi both wait at least a year anyway, just for cap stuff.
Yeah,
it looks like Go ahead.
It's a really well-built team, so I even like Talbot, and a lot of people naysay on Talbot. There's lovers and haters. He has nobody in the middle on Talbot. Everybody either thinks he's the greatest and he's going to be the team starter for 10 years, and there's guys who think he's one of the worst goalies and he's only being carried by a good team. I think he's more in the middle, and I think that's fine. I think he got like a Rinne type of goalie, and he's going to be fine. He's going to be average, but on a very good team, that's great. That's what you need. You can't pay a bunch of money to goalie.
It's scary for the Oilers if he's not fine. They have a bunch of prospects, but like goalies develop 24, 25 years old before you know what you have in a goalie. Like,
yeah,
Talbot better be fine, because if he's not fine, the Oilers are in big trouble.
Yeah, totally true. They've started a whole trend of teams doing what they did. I mean, I don't think they started it, but the adding a backup player from a team that like had done well. Like Grubauer was the next one, Washington's Grubauer, but Antti Ranta this year went to Arizona.
Darling in Carolina, right?
Darling in Carolina. But it's the teams that are making those moves are the teams that are up and coming, like Edmonton were. And they're like, you know what? We think we're good enough. If he's just almost as good as he was as a backup last year, we're going to be fine. And we don't have to pay him a bunch of money. It's a great way to save money.
Yeah.
That's true.
He doesn't have the career stats like Marc-Andre Fleury, who you got to pay all that money to. Who's not any better? Who's not a better goalie than?
Okay, you brought up Fleury's name. Oh man. Okay, was I hallucinating? Because when they were doing the Las Vegas expansion, we haven't talked about Vegas at all tonight, and I want to bring this up because I don't know what you folks thought, but that expansion, they did a terrible job. First of all, like Vegas, I don't know what the guy was smoking, but like brutal picks by Vegas. I don't understand what they did with their expansion at all. But the Fleury thing, the media was losing their mind about Fleury and great goalie and all this stuff. The guy's terrible. I've never understood this.
He's playing on the best team in the NHL, and he's not that good. Like, his stats are not that great. If you look at his save percentages and his even strength save percentage too, he's just an average goalie. He's not. People like his early career with the World Juniors, even though he choked in the World Juniors, but he had like an aura about him, and then he won a cup pretty quick with Pittsburgh. So, and he was drafted number 1, right? So he has that aura. Guys who get drafted number 1 keep a little bit of an aura, even if it's not deserved. Like Hull has turned into an average, not an average. He's a good player. But slightly above average, but he's still got that. Oh, but he was a first pick overall, so he might get 90 points some year. You never know.
Differ
on that team, New Jersey. Jeez.
Yeah, no, not obviously. I agree.
I beg to differ, Nail Yakupov.
Yeah, right. There's a perfect example. Doesn't always go on.
But the Oilers organization itself, like Cates, you know the story there with Yakupov, and Cates basically called Yakupov in the draft for because the fans were losing their minds. The Oilers management wanted to take Murray, and Cates
better though. That's the thing, right? Does that even work out any better them taking Murray? I mean, he's been a disaster as well.
Well, mostly he's been an injury disaster, right? Like, it's not necessarily that he's a bad player. Like, Yakupov most nights doesn't even look like he belongs in the NHL. There's no defensive, like, there's no hockey IQ there. Like, there's speed, there's a shot, but there's no hockey IQ. Murray he can play. It's just he's constantly injured. Which is another Oilers pet peeve I have, was at one point they were bringing in all these guys that constantly were injured. Well, why do that?
Yeah. That's like a lot of teams do that. Like, that's Buffalo. Buffalo, when you say Buffalo are going to be good this year, I'm like, well, they've got Lehner, who's always hurt, and he's 6'4" and 240 pounds flopping around in net. That's not a good recipe to stay healthy. And Okposo's got these. So they got on paper, if they're all healthy, yeah, Buffalo's great. But they got a lot of guys who get hurt a lot. So I don't trust that they're going to stay healthy.
I think that the Oilers mismanaged Yakupov right from the beginning. And the only thing I'm going to say about that is that I think that when they were ready to move on from him, they did a piss poor job of creating any extra value for him as well.
Yeah.
We were at the point when he was brought in and they were ready to move on from him. We were a team that wasn't going to make the playoffs. And the fact that they didn't actually give him first line ice time to create some value for him on the trade market shows me that they were having a real hard time managing properly the situation.
Yeah.
I just had him.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I just had a message come up on my iPad saying I have 10% battery. So,
Oh, that's right.
so I'm going to be dying here soon, just so you know.
That's fine. We could probably wrap this up anytime here now anyway. I don't know if you want to stay live, Shane, and just keep going with the draft stuff.
I'll stay live and talk about the draft. I like talking to somebody while I draft anyway. So
we can wrap this up anytime here now if you're ready to sneak off, Richard. It's fine. I think we pretty much did what we needed to do. We're gonna try and do one of these every Sunday if we can. I don't know if you're available for that all the time, Richard, but we'd definitely like to have that group of guys if we can.
Yeah, I'm going on vacation pretty much all of October.
Okay.
But November I'll be back, and Jess is actually going back to Australia for university, so I'll be bored as hell. So
Lovely.
Let you entertain me.
Yeah, good for us, bad for you, I guess, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice to meet you, though, Richard.
Yeah, very nice.
Chat in the group a bit, but I mean, it's nice to actually see you on screen. So
absolutely, thanks, man. It's been fun, and you guys, good luck with your draft.
Fine. I'm going to be in Edmonton from December 19th to January 14th as well. So I'm not sure if you'll be around in Edmonton at all. But if you are, I would definitely like to take you out and have a beer with you.
Outstanding.
But a coffee would work. I drink coffee as well. So
yeah, outstanding. Yeah, well, you never know with me. I'm kind of all over the place with this job. I don't think I've ever had a job where I've flown so much in my whole life. So. And I've been north of the 72nd parallel as part of this job.
Yeah, I see you're traveling quite a bit here the next little while. It's good to see. I'm glad to see everything's working out for you and you're happy. And
oh yeah. Life's good. Life's good. So, well, thanks guys. You enjoy your draft.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks a lot. See you later, Richard.
Bye.
We'll be back again soon. This is the Hockey Outsiders.